Uh, uh, uh. And then Wally says, I don't know, let's go. Then Wally says, the tiara, it's gone. And just like that when Wally says, the tiara, it's gone. Where Libby says, oh no, the tiara, it's not there. Where Libby says, who wanted to steal the tiara? And then Bob Goblin says, Wally Trollman, Wally Trollman. And then Wally says, what's wrong, Bob Goblin? And just like that when Wally says, what's wrong, Bob Goblin? Then Bob Goblin says, Bob Goblin doesn't know how to tell you this, but Scout stole the tiara with a meteor crystal on there, and she got superpowers, and she wants to be mighty queen of the forest. And then Wally and the others says, then Wally says, oh no, this is terrible. Where Libby says, this is bad, really bad. Then Wally asks, you can say that again. The Scout said, that's right, Wally Trollman. And just like that when Scout says, that's right, Wally Trollman. Since I have all the mighty powers in that tiara, I want to be mighty queen of the forest. Then her Spain says, us too. Where Wally says, oh no, Scout wants to be the mighty queen of the forest, and she's got superpowers. Where Libby says, and her bandmates. Where Wally says, and look, she took that tree from the ground. Where Libby says, we gotta catch it. Where Bob Goblin says, don't worry, I'll go Wally. Where Bob Goblin says, ah, look out. Where Wally says, whoa, that hill's pretty steep, but we can't go down. Where Bob Goblin says, how do we catch up to her? And just like that when Bob Goblin says, how do we catch up to her? Then Wally says, don't worry, we'll use a magic word. Why do we use the word zip and then line? Where Wally says, can you help me read this word? Zip line. Zip line. What word is that? Where Wally says, yeah, zip line. It's a magic word, and it starts with the letter Z and the Z sound. Where Wally says, let's make a zip line. Then Bob Goblin says, wow, how does this work? Then Wally says, you'll see. Where Bob Goblin says, here we go! And then Wally says, pretty fun, huh? And